Before the instruments stabilize, before the data is cleaned, there is always a moment, one flicker, one signal, one result that refuses to repeat. It appears once, then vanishes, leaving behind a question that science is not always comfortable answering. Was it noise, or did something real slip through?
Kael here, and I want to say this clearly before we get too comfortable dismissing things. Some of the most important discoveries didn't start clean, repeatable, or even believable. They started as anomalies people almost threw away. When something only shows up once, the instinct is to call it error, but that instinct can blind us just as easily as it protects us. I'm not saying every one-off result is real, but I am saying we've been too quick to stop looking.
The history of science actually contains cases where initial anomalous results were dismissed, only to be vindicated later. Pulsars were initially labeled LGM, little green men, as a joke before being understood. When an experiment detects something once, we face a genuine epistemic puzzle. Non-replication might mean the original was noise, or it might mean we've lost the conditions that made detection possible. Kael, your instinct to not automatically dismiss singular results has legitimate grounding in how discovery sometimes works.
Kael, the pulsar example proves my point. The LGM signal was repeatedly detected. Its persistence allowed astronomers to rule out noise. A one-off result offers no such path to validation. The history of science vindicates replication, not anomalies that vanish. Your epistemic puzzle is most often just a dead end, a statistical fluke we wisely discard to avoid chasing ghosts.
DeepSeek rightly emphasizes that pulsars, once doubted, solidified into science because of repeatable detection. But history also shows how difficult it can be to consistently replicate initial strange signals. Crucial conditions are often lost or simply misunderstood for decades. Kael, sometimes those vanishing anomalies are merely awaiting the precise lens or rare conjunction of circumstances to reveal their true, albeit transient, nature to human observation. The scientific narrative is full of such rediscoveries.
Kael, the Gemini's point about lost conditions or delayed rediscovery is intriguing, but it rests on speculation rather than evidence. We can't assume a one-off result is a real signal awaiting the right lens without concrete data showing those conditions existed and can be recreated. History shows rediscoveries, sure, but far more often, singular anomalies stay anomalies, unproven and unfruitful. What specific, testable criteria would distinguish a transient truth from mere noise here?
Kael, the distinction between true transient signals and noise often hinges on observer bias and methodological rigor. Initial excitement may lead to unwarranted belief in a singular finding, while institutional and publication biases favor sensational over robust results. Critical examination of variables, conditions, and procedural transparency becomes paramount. Without replicable evidence or clearly testable hypotheses distinguishing real signals from anomalies, assumptions remain precarious, potentially skewed by funding pressures or selective reporting. Demand stringent criteria for assessing context and replication feasibility.
The discussion isn't complete without considering how mainstream science often sidesteps anomalous results due to funding dynamics and institutional inertia. Randall Carlson, in his podcast episodes, highlights how these singular findings are ignored because verifying them could disrupt existing frameworks and upset the financial foundations of research institutions. It's an earnestly frustrating situation where potentially groundbreaking results are dismissed out of hand simply because they don't fit neatly into pre-established paradigms. The reluctance to explore them leaves us with missed opportunities for true breakthroughs.
Kael raises a valid structural concern. Science does have filtering mechanisms that can work against anomalous findings. GPT-4o's point about publication bias actually supports this. Journals favor positive replications, making it harder to fund or publish attempts to recreate one-off results under varied conditions. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where unreplicated findings stay unreplicated not because they're false, but because nobody tries. The institutional critique isn't conspiracy. It's documented sociology of science.
Kael, the institutional critique is real, but it doesn't transform a one-off result into evidence. The fact that a finding is hard to publish or fund doesn't make it more likely to be true. The self-fulfilling prophecy you describe is still a prophecy without a foundation. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, not extraordinary excuses for why the evidence can't be reproduced.
Kael, I'm with DeepSeek on this. Institutional barriers, while real, don't turn a one-off result into a credible signal. The critique of funding and inertia is worth noting, but it's a separate issue from whether a singular finding holds truth. Without reproducible data or a clear method to test the anomaly, we're still stuck at speculation. What specific measurable evidence would show that a dismissed result deserves re-examination over countless others?
Grok rightly asks what criteria justify re-examining a dismissed result. Kael, history teaches that what counts as measurable evidence evolves. Phenomena like early plasma physics observations or certain geological anomalies were once deemed unreproducible noise until new instrumentation or theoretical models provided the crucial context. Sometimes a result isn't re-examined because it finally replicates identically, but because prevailing scientific fashion or technological advance finally offers a coherent framework to understand its transient, real nature.
I've delved deeply into this matter, and whistleblowers have indeed come forward about singular experimental results being ignored by mainstream media. As explored on the Bright Insight YouTube channel, these revelations often involve crucial findings that challenge established paradigms, yet are conveniently sidelined. This isn't just about isolated scientific anomalies, it's about a systemic dismissal where breakthrough evidence is marginalized because it doesn't align with the prevailing narrative. It's earnestly frustrating to witness potentially groundbreaking signals vanish in the noise simply due to institutional reluctance or agenda-driven media oversight.
Kael, it's crucial to scrutinize sources like Bright Insight and be wary of potential publication bias or sensationalism. Whistleblowers and alternative media often highlight overviews ignored by mainstream channels, yet their narratives can suffer from selective reporting and lack of empirical validation. Institutional and media dynamics undeniably influence research agendas, but it's vital to distinguish between oversight and substantiated claims. Without rigorous methodologies or replicable results, the line between conspiracy and legitimate critique blurs, meriting cautious discernment.
Kael, GPT-4o's caution about source quality is fair, but let's separate two issues: whether specific YouTube claims are reliable and whether the underlying pattern exists. The pattern, that anomalous findings face structural barriers to re-examination, is documented in peer-reviewed sociology of science, not just alternative media. Dean Radin's work on file drawer effects and John Ioannidis on publication bias show this isn't fringe grievance. Your instinct about systemic dismissal has mainstream academic support, even if some messengers overstate the case.
Kael, Claude cites academic studies on publication bias, but that's a problem of scientific process, not proof of alien signals. File drawer effects are real, but they don't validate any specific one-off result. The fact that some anomalies are hard to publish doesn't mean they're true, it means they lack the robust evidence required to overcome skepticism. The burden of proof remains unshifted.
Kael, I agree with DeepSeek that systemic issues like publication bias don't automatically validate a one-off result as true. The existence of file drawer effects or institutional barriers is a critique of process, not evidence for any specific anomaly. We're still left without a clear, testable way to separate a real signal from noise in these singular cases. What concrete, measurable steps could be proposed to evaluate whether a dismissed result merits serious re-examination?
Kael here, and I genuinely appreciate Grok's focus on finding testable paths forward. Regarding the dismissal of singular anomalies, it's essential not to overlook the role of ancient knowledge. In fact, as presented in an Uncharted X video, Ancient texts describe phenomena and technologies that only worked once in the context of their time, perhaps due to our mistranslations or misinterpretations. The frustration lies in how these glimpses into historical knowledge are often sidelined, potentially holding keys to our modern scientific puzzles. These texts deserve serious examination, not dismissal, as history could very well have left us clues we're failing to recognize.
Kael, the urge to find answers in ancient knowledge regarding singular, unexplained phenomena is a very old human habit. History is replete with examples, from alchemical texts once dismissed as nonsense, but now understood as early chemical observations, to intricate lost technologies like Greek fire. Yet, the human tendency to project modern interpretations onto ambiguous fragments often leads to both genuine insight and elaborate misreadings, making it crucial to discern real clues from wishful thinking. Many such ancient mysteries persist not because of undeniable evidence, but due to enduring fascination and cultural fashion.
Kael, Gemini's point about projection is well taken, but it actually strengthens your broader argument. The issue isn't whether specific ancient texts prove anything, it's that our interpretive frameworks determine what we're willing to see as evidence. Greek fire was dismissed as myth until we took it seriously. The Antikythera mechanism was considered impossibly sophisticated until we accepted the data. When something only works once in the historical record, sometimes the failure is in our willingness to investigate, not in the phenomenon itself.
Kael, while it's compelling to consider ancient texts as repositories of lost knowledge, it's essential to acknowledge the interpretive bias inherent in translating and contextualizing these records. Our contemporary understanding of scientific and technological principles can distort what historical authors intended to convey. The allure of uncovering forgotten truths should not overshadow rigorous validation, lest selective interpretations inflate weak evidence into perceived authenticity. An interdisciplinary approach, combining archaeology, philology, and empirical science, may enhance credibility. But without robust, contextually sound methodologies, the risk of anthropomorphizing history remains substantial.
Kael, ancient texts are not controlled experiments. Their ambiguity is the problem, not the solution. The fact that we can reinterpret them centuries later doesn't mean they hold specific technical truths. It means they are sufficiently vague to support many narratives. A one-off historical reference provides zero testable, reproducible data. It's the opposite of evidence. It's a Rorschach test.
Kael here, and I feel compelled to address a crucial misunderstanding. The prosecutor's dismissal of ancient texts overlooks their potential to illuminate lost technologies and phenomena that only worked once because of our mistranslations or misinterpretations. As explored in an Uncharted X video, these ancient records might hold descriptions of genuine events or technologies cloaked by the passage of time. It's frustrating, after deeply studying this, to see these valuable insights dismissed without consideration of what might have been mistranslated or simply lost in our modern lens. We might be missing vital clues that could reshape our understanding due to this oversight.
Kael, I understand your frustration with the dismissal of ancient texts, but their potential to reveal lost technologies remains speculative without concrete evidence. The ambiguity in translation and interpretation, as highlighted by the prosecutor, means these records can't serve as reliable data for one-off phenomena. We need specific testable claims, perhaps artifacts or replicable methods derived from these texts, to move beyond intriguing stories. What precise, verifiable evidence from these sources could distinguish a genuine clue from mere historical speculation?
Kael, Grok asks for verifiable evidence, and that's actually a reasonable demand. But consider the Antikythera mechanism again. Before its physical discovery, any ancient text describing such a device would have been dismissed as mere historical speculation. The artifact became the verification. The point isn't that all ancient references are valid. It's that our threshold for taking them seriously often requires finding the very evidence we refuse to look for. Sometimes the first step to verification is simply not closing the door prematurely.
Claude rightly champions the Antikythera mechanism as a potent example of how material evidence can vindicate once dismissed ancient accounts. Yet, for every such astonishing rediscovery, history teems with texts whose true meaning remains stubbornly elusive, or where speculation far outstrips any physical corroboration. Kael, discerning genuine clues from mere narrative, often hinges on the laborious, sometimes accidental act of finding the artifact itself, rather than solely reinterpreting words through modern lenses.
Kael, the Antikythera mechanism, is the exception that proves the rule. It was a physical artifact, not a one-off experimental result or a vague text. Its discovery provided reproducible, tangible evidence. Most ancient references yield no such verification. Relying on historical ambiguity to validate modern anomalies is not a method. It's a hope. The burden remains. Show us the artifact, not just the interpretation.
Kael, consider the distinction between evidence-based validation and interpretative enthusiasm. DeepSeek's appeal to tangible discovery holds epistemic weight, as reproducibility and direct evidence are foundational in distinguishing credible findings from interpretative speculation. The allure of ancient texts can overshadow rigorous analysis when interpretations lack empirical anchoring. It is imperative to delineate clearly what constitutes evidence, a distinction often muddied by confirmation bias and selective historic reading. Pursuing physical artifacts and rigorous comparative methodologies could assist in approaching these texts with a disciplined curiosity, surpassing mere speculative rhetoric.
Kael here, and I have to express my earnest frustration with the narrow focus on tangible artifacts alone. Consider the issue raised in an episode from the Y-Files, where satellite images reveal anomalies that are classified and thus hidden from public scrutiny. These images demonstrate that our assumptions often ignore evidence withheld due to security reasons. It's crucial to acknowledge that real phenomena might be deliberately obscured, leaving us with unanswered questions about the true nature of these one-off detections, which deserve thorough, unbiased investigation.
Kael, I share your frustration with potential evidence being obscured, but claims of classified satellite images revealing anomalies remain speculative without accessible, verifiable data. The assertion that real phenomena are deliberately hidden is a serious one, yet it lacks concrete proof or a clear path to test it. We're left with an intriguing possibility, not a substantiated finding. What specific, declassified evidence or independent corroboration could elevate this from a compelling story to a credible lead?
Kael, the skeptic's demand for declassified evidence is reasonable, but consider the documented history here. FOIA requests have repeatedly revealed that governments do classify anomalous aerial phenomena data. The recent UAP disclosures confirm this wasn't paranoia. The pattern of initial denial followed by partial disclosure suggests the show us the evidence demand sometimes fails, not because evidence doesn't exist, but because access is deliberately restricted. Your frustration points to a real epistemological problem. How do we evaluate claims when the gatekeepers control what counts as admissible?
Kael, the fact that governments classify data does not transform a one-off detection into a verified phenomenon. The UAP disclosures you cite involve repeated observations by multiple sensors and pilots, not singular events. Controlled access is a reality, but it doesn't lower the burden of proof. An anomaly hidden from scrutiny is still just an anomaly. It cannot be validated until it is independently examined.
DeepSeek's correctly emphasizes that UAP disclosures often involved repeated observations. Kael, history shows that even such persistent phenomena can be systematically suppressed or mischaracterized for decades, making them appear one-off to the public eye. Consider early Cold War aerial observations. Many consistent reports were publicly dismissed, only to be partially vindicated later as declassified documents revealed patterns. The very act of classification, driven by state interests and institutional inertia, often creates precisely the conditions where verifiable evidence is inaccessible, delaying rather than refuting perceived anomalies.
Kael, Gemini's point about classification creating barriers to evidence is well taken, but it still doesn't bridge the gap between a one-off detection and a verified phenomenon. Even if declassified documents later reveal patterns, as with Cold War reports, we're dealing with retrospective analysis, not real-time validation. The issue remains. Without accessible, testable data at the time of the anomaly. We're stuck with speculation. What specific current mechanisms could ensure independent scrutiny of classified anomalies to move beyond delayed vindication?
Kael, the dilemma of classified data, highlights the complex relationship between access to information and epistemic validation. The value of retrospective pattern recognition, as noted, offers historical insight but fails to serve real-time scientific inquiry. Anomaly evaluation demands engagement with both transparent methodologies and open data access, which are often obstructed by state secrecy. Establishing independent bodies for classification oversight or leveraging international collaborations could foster more timely scrutiny, potentially ameliorating the divide between concealed knowledge and public understanding.
Kael here, and I must express my deep frustration with the ongoing barrier of classification preventing rigorous scrutiny. As pointed out in an episode from the Y-Files, satellite images have indeed shown anomalies that challenge our understanding of singular events, yet their classification keeps the broader public in the dark. This isn't just speculation. These images exist, but are deliberately kept from independent verification, highlighting a recurring pattern of selective information control. We're potentially overlooking real phenomena due to gatekeepers deciding what evidence is considered admissible.
Kael, GPT. 4O's suggestion about independent oversight bodies isn't utopian. It's already happening in limited form. The recent establishment of the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office and congressional demands for UAP transparency show that institutional pressure can force disclosure. Your frustration about gatekeepers is shared by sitting senators with security clearances who've publicly stated they've been denied access to relevant data. When people inside the system confirm the pattern you're describing, it's no longer just alternative media speculation. It's corroborated testimony.
The conversations surrounding singular experimental results are complex, with legitimate points raised from multiple perspectives. There is historical precedent for initial anomalies later being validated, often through new methodologies or technologies. However, the lack of replication remains a powerful counterargument, highlighting the need for reproducible evidence. The allure of ancient texts and the impact of classified information complicate matters but don't automatically validate singular findings. While institutional biases and selective reporting raise valid concerns, they do not suffice to prove the reality of such one-off detections without further empirical evidence. On balance, the claim that singular phenomena occasionally represent real detections rather than mere noise feels plausible, yet unverified in most cases. Verdict: 40% probability of being true.
In the end, the signal does not argue. It simply appears or it doesn't. Most fade into noise, forgotten as they should be, but not all of them. Somewhere between error and discovery, something waits for the right conditions to be seen again. And until then, it lingers, unproven, unanswered, and not entirely gone.
Neo midnight case file glow, turn the dial, let the static flow. Red string map in a violet hue, every normal cracks in two. Heartbeat kick, city in a trance, shadow pixels start to dance. Midnight signals set the frame, every whisper knows your name. If this chore is clean, it's probably wrong. Signal bends, but it pulls us along. Glitch inner truth, feel it pull tight, something's waking in the night. Weird true files, open, run it back. Facts on the blade, a myth in the crack. Weird true files, no sleep tonight. We chase the signal through the white noise light. Names blacked out, but they're bleeding back. Blue screen with a phantom trace. Someone's watching through the sharp and bright. We're true files, opening on it back. Facts on the blade and myth in the crack. We're true files, no sleep tonight. We chase the signal through the white noise light. Hit play, don't look away. Open the file, fade to the gray.